Am I speaking to an empty room? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Yesterday I became aware of an intern recruitment effort by our campaign that involved outreach by a staffer to educators at various colleges and universities and schools across the city, including CPS. As soon as I learned about the outreach to the CPS teachers, we put a stop to it. Bottom line here is it was clearly a mistake, and we've made sure that we emphasize that not only to the staffer involved, but everybody on our campaign to ensure that this kind of conduct doesn't happen again. As I said, in this instance, the staffer made a mistake. It was well-intentioned, but she now recognizes that the CPS outreach, even though through publicly available sources, was not the right thing to do. And we emphasized to her and to other people in the campaign, I'm not just some candidate, I'm the mayor, and responsible for the schools, and this is the kind of outreach that never should have happened, whether through publicly available sources or not. The person who did this understands the magnitude of the issue and frankly is mortified that this happened and that she's brought attention to herself in the campaign and notably to me in this way. That staffer and our entire staff have been firmly reminded that there must be an impenetrable wall, not just a line, but a wall between anything that happens on the political side and anything that happens on the official side, the government side, and that wall can never be breached. I have always held myself to a high ethical standard. I campaigned on it, I govern that way, and that's the way I will continue to conduct myself, and people on my team must understand that and abide by it accordingly. I've spoken to both CEO Martinez and Board Chair DeValier and apologized to them for this unnecessary distraction and mistake that is distracting from the dedicated and hard work the CPS does every single day to make sure that our kids learn in a safe and nurturing environment. So to be clear, I found out about this for the first time yesterday afternoon when we got a media inquiry. There was absolutely no nefarious intent on the part of the staff person, and there simply was no coercion. I've seen that question bubble up. There was no coercion, no intent to do that by any means by this young woman, and no city resources were used. I'll repeat again, the outreach to the CPS teachers via their emails was a mistake, should not have happened, and is not going to happen again. Let me also just say, in closing before I take your questions, but there's been some commentary about whether the staff person should be fired. You know, the easy political thing to do would be to just do that, right? Fire her, throw her body to the hungry hordes. But I don't think that's the right thing to do in this instance. I thought a lot, and since I found out about this yesterday afternoon, of my own self as a 20-something-year-old in the workplace, trying to understand how to be a professional in the workplace, how to do your job. And, you know I made mistakes as a young lawyer. And sometimes those mistakes were painful. And I got a kick in the butt from the senior lawyers that I work for. But I learned from those experiences, and they gave me the opportunity to learn. I have a lot of young women that work for me, certainly in my political campaign, but also in my administration. I think this is an important teachable moment for them. It's not lost on me that I'm a role model to young women across the city. And I think I have an obligation, given that, to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to teach and mentor. And as I said, this to me is a mistake. She gets it 100%. But it's an opportunity for all of us to learn and for me to be a mentor and nurture her and frankly all the other young women that are out there who rely upon me. So firing, again, as I said, would be the very easy, typical political reflex. I don't think that that's the appropriate response in this circumstance. I'm happy to take your questions.
All right, we're going to do 2 questions per person as always. Why don't we start right here, so I have time to move first. hold on. Your campaign, Mayor, I believe, also said that other candidates and mayors have done things like this in the past.
Well,
Can you guys improve with that?
Well, Greg, my memory goes back to probably the George McGovern campaign. Every campaign that I've ever known of or been associated with always has an effort to try to recruit young people, to get them involved. Being involved in a political campaign, I think, and civic engagement, regardless of what your political persuasion is, in my view, is probably one of the most important aspects of government, of politics, and civic engagement. We need more young people to be involved. We need them to see the contours of campaigns, the good, the bad, and we need them to get that experience, because when they get that experience, and I'm one of them, that sticks with you. And you stay civically involved, and you do vote, and you recognize the importance of voting, which to me is the most powerful tool that we have in our American democracy. So if I may, I can think of lots of different campaigns that I've been involved in over the years. This is a very standard practice of trying to reach out and recruit people. The difference here is, the mistake that was made is she should not have used publicly available CPS emails to reach out to teachers. That's, I think, the difference maker and why I'm standing here today.
Can you provide an example of another campaign which used official email accounts?
No, I don't know that, and frankly, as I said, I'm not going to sit here and try to say, well, other people have done that. That's not what we've said. What we've said quite clearly, and let me repeat it again, is that engaging young people in a political campaign is something that is routinely done. The line that was crossed, that should not have been crossed, is Googling, finding CPS emails, and then reaching out to teachers and encouraging them to let their students know that these internship opportunities were there. That's the difference.
Justin, go ahead.
What do you mean by publicly available email addresses? You just said Googling, or?
My understanding is that she just did a Google search and found them.
So found them on the CPS, I mean, how many?
Did a Google search, she was looking for places where obviously students are, young people are. My understanding is that she did a Google search and found a bunch of CPS emails and then used them.
Okay, and then this email to CPS teachers seems to have gone out yesterday. TTW reported that back in August, a similar email was sent
I think that's correct. In August, right before school started, a similar effort. We had a lot of positive outreach and engagement with young people coming from a number of different sources. Adults, parents who are supporters, who were looking for opportunities to get their kids involved in our campaign. And as school was resuming across the city, that effort was made, I think, last August sometime.
I guess that points to this has been kind of a long-standing outreach.
Well, I don't think I'd go that far, Justin. What I would say is, the recent thing was not the first time. What I'm aware of is one other time in August, right before school started, where she did a similar thing and reached out to a wide array of folks to say, hey, there's this internship opportunity available on a Lightfoot campaign.
And just to be clear, you're saying you became aware of that August email
Yesterday.
Okay, bye.
My question's kind of two parts. Will your campaign allow CPS students to volunteer after this incident? And if so, is there any worry that their willingness is a bit tainted from this?
We will allow anybody who wants to volunteer to volunteer. Obviously, we want to make sure that people have and particularly young people, have a great, fulfilling experience, and so we do what we can to make sure that they're getting real exposure, not just frankly doing grunt work. But yeah, we'll take on. We are actively recruiting volunteers. We're hosting volunteer town halls. I just spoke at one yesterday. So yeah, we're close to the Bell Lap, and so we're inviting anybody who's interested. They can go to lightfootforchicago.com and sign up for volunteer opportunities.
One more?
Oh, no, that's it.
Okay.
Mauricio?
So as you mentioned, CPS and city colleges received the email. Is there any more agencies or departments that were contacted through this through similar efforts?
I'm not aware of the specific details. It will surprise you maybe that as the candidate and as the mayor of the city. I'm not involved in the nuts and bolts of volunteer recruitment, but we can certainly get you any other information.
And you said that you were aware only yesterday. You didn't conceive or approve of these emails?
I'm the candidate and the mayor of the third largest city. I don't really spend time running the volunteer recruitment opportunities. I became aware of the specifics of the outreach yesterday afternoon when we got the first media inquiry. Obviously, I knew that there were efforts being made to recruit volunteers with the specifics, and certainly if I had known that there was CPS emails being used, I would have put a stop to it long before yesterday.
Was that two? Sorry.
I guess.
Yeah, let's move on with the next one.
Hi,
Hey.
Mayor. I was
You
wondering.
decided to stick around, did you?
I did. I was wondering, outside of talking with your staff, your campaign staff, what other things would you be doing to ensure that your campaign follows ethical guidelines?
Well, we have a employee handbook. Everybody that gets on board is trained consistent with that. We have our campaign lawyer, who's also a campaign ethics expert, comes in, does a training. So we've re-emphasized the training that they previously had, and specifically to the circumstances. Look, people get it. It's not a secret what's going on. Yes, ma'am.
What's your response to the Inspector General, the CPS, and the City and Board of Ethics all saying this is something they're looking into and addressing?
Well, they have every right to look into it, and if there is a need for us to respond, we'll cooperate fully.
And secondly, a little unrelated, a WBZ investigation out today found that because of short staffing, Chicago police are turning.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
With my bad hearing, and you talk very, very fast, so if
Okay,
you can
I'll
slow
slow
it down and speak up just a little bit.
Yeah, a WBZ investigation out today found that because of short staffing, Chicago police are turning away people trying to register for gun offenses, sex crimes, violent murders against youth, and that puts registrants trying to follow the law at risk of rearrest. Do you have any plans on how your office is going to address that issue?
Well, I was not aware of that, but obviously we need to make sure that we're abiding by the law, particularly when it comes to these folks that have to register on a regular basis. Something I will take up with the superintendent and deal with that to make sure that they're able to comply with the law, and that we're doing what we need to do to make sure that they have the ability to register accordingly.
Okay, Chris?
Hi, Craig.
Hi. A lot of the attention has been focused on the staffer who sent the letter, but is this really one person getting it wrong? Since the campaign itself defended the move at one point, and if it happened before, did no one else not know what was going on?
Well, what I will say is this. I'm not aware that anybody else in the campaign knew that this particular staffer was using CPS emails. Obviously, the fact that she was actively recruiting young people to come and volunteer and participate in internship opportunities, clearly that was known. But the use of the CPS emails, I'm not aware that anybody else knew that. And as I said, I found out about it for the first time yesterday afternoon. We put an immediate stop to it. I brought the young woman in to talk to her about why that was a problem, and the hubbub, obviously, that it's created, but also to explain to her, as I said in my opening statements, I'm not just a candidate, I'm the incumbent mayor, and why this is highly problematic, and the wall that's got to exist, and it includes things like not contacting city employees, sister agency employees, using their work emails. That was a mistake.
And the other question, only tangentially related, and that is, what have you decided to do about the chairmanship of the City Council's Ethics Committee?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation in the media about it, but I regularly talk to my colleagues in the City Council to see if there's any specific issues that they want to bring to the fore. I've not heard of any, but if there are, I'm sure that the Ethics Committee will proceed accordingly.
Sir?
Hi, I'm from Bloomberg News.
Okay.
Is there anything that you can say on efforts to recruit more officers with the number of police kind of still being down?
Well, we ended last year having hired 956 officers in a tough time to recruit, not just here in Chicago, nationwide. I attribute that success to a couple of things. Number one, we have a full-time recruiting team that got stood up in 2021, and they are literally scouring the country to talk about why coming to work as a Chicago police officer is a good job. We're going to college campuses. We're going to, most of the military branches have a process by which when someone's separating from the military, they have a transition process. So we've connected up with those folks. And frankly, we're also really, I think, leaning into efforts to talk to existing officers about encouraging people in their network to also inquire. It's a really, really, really hard job. And it's a really hard job and probably the toughest time to be the police. But nonetheless, people who are drawn to public service, this is a good job. It's incredibly rewarding. It's very well paid. The benefits are extraordinary. And so we're, I think, doing with intentionality and focus, really making sure that we're doing everything that we can. The other thing that I'll say that I think has contributed to it is the superintendent and his team really kind of deconstructed the whole process from application to when somebody comes into the academy and looked at where we were seeing drop-offs in the number of applicants. Because the applications are pretty high. I'm told that the typical yield is about 10%, and we're right about that. I'd like to see us, frankly, do better than what the norm is. But there were places along the way that we knew that we needed to improve, one of which was something called a power test. And we were losing people because they couldn't do sit-ups. And so we've worked with them to help get applicants into shape. We talked to the state. For example, the military doesn't have a I'm told, never having tried to get into the military, I'm told doesn't have a pre-admissions physical fitness test. The goal is you go to, basically recruiting, basic training, and you work your way into physical fitness. We'd like to see, frankly, that happen with policing. That is going to require a state law change, but they've given us some flexibility. But there's a number of other things that we're looking at, because I'd like to see that yield over the arc of this year be higher than 956. I'd like to see us be over 1,000. We're back down, I think, to normal retirement and attrition rates. We were way up in 2021. We're back down to normal now. But this is something we've got to stay extraordinarily diligent. Early on in my tenure as mayor, sitting at a police graduation, looking out into the audience, and then seeing the graduates rock across the stage, the light bulb went off that these young men and women are walking into middle-class lifestyles for the rest of their life. That is a powerful tool that we as a city can use to create middle-class wealth and build back our city and our middle-class population. So I'm very, very focused on that with police, with fire, with teachers. So I want to make sure not only are we doing what's necessary to keep our police population up to an appropriate level, but this is a wealth building tool as well.
A group of at least 4 aldermen are calling for a city council investigation into as well, with a joint hearing of the ethics and education committees. If that gets scheduled, do you plan on complying with any requests that they have?
As I said, any investigation that's out there, we will cooperate fully.
Did you have a follow-up?
Oh, me? Yeah. So
Greg.
how concerned are you about this, and how much do you think it's going to affect your campaign?
Well, I'm not happy that this happened, obviously. As I said, I pride myself on upholding a very high standard of ethics. I've been very, very clear from the outset with our campaign team, but also on the official side, there's got to be a wall. And we reemphasize that not only on the campaign side, I reemphasize that with my senior staff on the official side, and we'll just keep making sure that everybody understands that the wall can't be breached. But as I said before, it was a mistake. It was a young person who was enthusiastic, well-intentioned, but she made a mistake, and we're dealing with it accordingly.
You have a second?
Yes. How much freedom have your campaign staff to do or take actions that probably, I know that you say that this is, or you're going to make sure that this is not going to happen again, but how are you going to prevent this?
Well, I mean, it starts with talking about what happened and how it happened and why it can't happen again. It's reemphasizing the ethical boundaries that we have had in place from day one of this campaign, and how every person who's onboarded goes through an orientation process, includes making sure that they're upholding the highest ethical standards. So it's just, this is, as I said, an important teachable moment. We're taking advantage of that opportunity to make sure that everybody on our staff understands where the wall is and that can't be breached.
Mayor, can you just clarify what actions were taken to recruit students over to city colleges? Were these the same kind of breaches where emails were used at city colleges, or were these just other recruiting efforts for young people in city colleges?
I don't have that level of detail, but we can definitely get it to you.
But
I know
city
that there was
colleges
some outreach to not only city colleges but other colleges and universities across the city, but the specifics of that I don't have, but we can get that to you.
On another topic, a couple of people have told me that this crime prevention program, the community crime prevention program the police launched last week,
Yeah.
the command level staff are being told they have to go door to door on the south and west side and talk about crime tips and city service requests for people. Is this the best use of command staff? And did you order this?
I did not order it. This is something that was originated by the superintendent and his leadership team. But yeah, I think it's a good thing that the white shirts are out there, leading by example, and talking to community members about what resources are available for them, particularly focused on crime, using it as an opportunity also, frankly, which happens through the DCO program and business liaison officers on a regular basis anyway, but using it as an opportunity to inform people about what city services are available for them. I think that, and it's not just on it's not going to be just on the south and the west side. It's going to be focused on those areas of the city that have experienced historically or recently high rates of violence, and to let the community see the police when it's not a law enforcement emergency. We know through our own experience, but also, frankly, the experience across the country, that you build trust by being present. You build trust by being present and making sure that people recognize the police, frankly, as a legitimate force for good. And yeah, of course the white shirts should be out there. They got to lead by example. They can't just say, hey, you POs, you do it, and I'll sit and do whatever. I think this is a good, healthy thing, because when the supervisors, the exempt personnel are out there in these neighborhoods themselves, just like when I am out in a neighborhood, I get to see things from my own perspective, my own eyes, and not filtered through somebody else. And I think it's important for community members to see that the police department from top to bottom has their back, and gives the community an opportunity to say directly to those supervisors who can make a difference in deployments, I'm sure we're going to be getting, hey, that lot, that building, those kinds of things. Those are important things for the supervisors also to hear from community members. Building that feedback loop and that dialogue, that's what real community policing has to be about at its essence.
Mayor, the general kind of feedback I'm hearing is it's hard to believe one young staffer came up with this idea all by herself with the promise of school credit. Is your campaign also having a hard time recruiting volunteers?
No, we're not having a hard time recruiting volunteers at all. We held a volunteer town hall about a week, 10 days ago, and we had roughly 200 people that were on a Zoom. We did another one, I think it was just last night or the day before. We had another 50. We're not having any problem. There's a lot of interest and enthusiasm. I think realistically, and it's not surprising, after we got past the holidays, people are really focused. They're focused on the fact that there's a mayoral election. They're focused on the fact that this is an important opportunity for them to get involved, to exercise their rights as voters. and they're gravitating towards different campaigns, and I'm happen to be the beneficiaries of, I think, that enthusiasm, and I absolutely welcome it.
From Heather Sharon, she asked me to forward this question. You ran for mayor in 2019 on a platform promising to root out corruption at City Hall and toughen the city's ethics regulations in an attempt to break the grip of the city's corrupt political machine. Have you failed to live up to that promise?
No, not at all. Early on in our tenure, as you may recall, we passed the toughest ethics reform package in the city's history. We've challenged the status quo at every level of government. We've broken up the status quo, whether it comes to automatic prerogative, whether it comes to putting the interests of individuals ahead of what's in the best interest of our city. We're taking on those fights. We've never shied away from them. And nothing that's happened in the last 24 hours that's been revealed has changed that one bit.
Good afternoon, Mayor. So, what kind of internal investigation have you guys done to establish that the staffer wasn't just acting on her own and hadn't cleared it with supervisors or talked about it with other people in the campaign, and it wasn't just like an idea and she's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to send these emails, but didn't talk about it also with people?
Well, as I said before in answer to a previous question, what I know is obviously that the staffer obviously reports to a supervisor. The supervisor clearly understood and directed that the outreach was appropriate because of the level of participation that we saw over the course of the summer from young people, whether it's high schoolers or college or what have you. So yeah, absolutely that was known. The details of, oh, I went and Googled and I found this email, I don't believe that was known by anyone because we're about the work. There's a lot going on. We're not a huge campaign team, as you might imagine. All campaigns try to keep themselves, particularly paid staff, as lean as possible. But I'm confident that we have a sense of what happened. I talked to the staffer yesterday. She was debriefed by senior leadership on the campaign, both yesterday and again this morning, so I think we have a pretty good handle on it. But the bottom line here, folks, is this. It was a mistake. She understands that it was a mistake. We put guardrails in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Now, the email also suggests that, if you do this, you can get class credit, which would suggest that maybe they talked to CPS. They had some impression that you could get class credit. Now, maybe is your understanding that they were just conjecturing that you could get class credit, or that they had spoken to somebody about that?
I can't answer that specific question, but I do know, for example, on college campuses, there are professors who encourage students, particularly in political science or government classes, to get internships, and that they do provide opportunities for class credit. I don't know that that part of it was specifically tailored to CPS. I wouldn't take that leap. Heather.
Mayor, are you apologizing for this?
I think I have apologized. I apologize to Pedro Martinez. I apologize to President Devallier. This was a mistake. It should not have happened, period.
You personally are apologizing.
I just verbalized to you that it was a mistake. It should not happen.
I just think, it's been pointed out here a number of times, one staffer having done this. Some are saying that that's just not believable.
Well, there's all sorts of speculations, but I can tell you what the facts are. It was a particular staffer who made a mistake, who used publicly available emails that she found via Google searches, and she understands why that was problematic, and that the mistake was made, and it's not going to be made again.
Hi, Mayor Marissa from CBS. Do you think this will impact training for future employees who work for your campaign?
Do I think it will?
Impact training.
Well, it already has impacted training. We redoubled our training efforts to make sure yesterday and today that our staff understands that the wall can't be breached, period. And I think, unfortunately, this is a very graphic example of what happens when it is. And I think it's going to be not only a teachable moment, but a real learning experience that the people on our staff, and particularly the young people, are going to take with them on a going forward basis.
And then we have one off topic from our newsroom. What would you say to Woodlawn residents frustrated by the lack of transparency when it comes to the plans to house migrants at the closed school there?
Well, I don't think there's been a lack of transparency. In fact, we have another community meeting tonight to come back and answer the questions of community members that were raised at the previous meeting that we had. So we are engaged. We've talked, and I personally have talked multiple times with the alderman. I've talked with Dr. Brazier. Our team has been engaging with other stakeholders there for a couple of weeks now since we made the decision that was necessary for us to open up Wadsworth School. So I would not say that there's any lack of transparency, quite the opposite. Yes, ma'am.
Once you found out about the emails going out yesterday, did you get any information on how many went out to teachers, recently and then back in August?
Well, what my initial reaction was I wasn't happy about the fact that it happened. I talked to our campaign manager. I brought the young woman in to explain to her why this was a problem. Our team is kind of dug into more specifics, so I didn't know that as of yesterday. But I think, again, a mistake was made. It's real clear that that should never have happened, and we are doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again. I don't think it was anywhere near that. I don't want to speculate about what the number is. We're doing an accounting to come to that. We'll share that when we've got it. But like I said, it was a well-intentioned but bad mistake that shouldn't have happened. Period. Full stop.
Mayor,
Can you just speak up a little bit back there?
Are you aware, have any students responded wanting that credit in exchange for this extra?
I'm not aware of any student coming to the campaign and saying, I'm here because I want college credit. What I'm aware of is young people responding, I think, to our message of what we've done, what we've accomplished, and what our vision is for the future, and being excited about being part of this dynamic, progressive campaign. That I'm certainly aware of.
And just to clarify, are you aware of any conversations that were had between your office and
There was zero conversation between my office and anyone on the campaign side, the official side, and CPS. As I said, I learned about this for the first time late yesterday afternoon when we got the first media inquiry. I immediately, upon hearing about it, said cease and desist. I picked up the phone and I called CEO Martinez to read him into it. He was unaware of it. There was zero coordination, coercion, or anything else between the campaign and CPS on this issue. Zero. And I want that to be abundantly clear.
Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you all.